Okay, let's go. Hi and welcome everybody, SUSE QE Tools workshop. I can immediately hand over to Tina, which you can already see on the screen. So Tina, tell us something about maintaining Perl packages from cpan on OBS.
Yes, welcome. Yeah, first of all, I would like to know from you how many people of you are maintaining a package in OBS. Can you maybe use the hand raising feature? So 3, 4, 3. Okay. And how many of you have been using, for example, py2pack for generating a Python package? Okay, 1.
Yes, well.
Okay. Or many, how many of you have been using the tool for Ruby to generate a Ruby spec file? Okay. Yeah, 1. Okay. I forget how it's called. I had written it down somewhere, but
spec.
Yeah. Okay, and how many of you have been using cpan spec for generating a Perl spec file? Okay, 2. Okay, I'm sharing now and I'm still in here. Yay. Okay. Can you all see
That looks good.
the window? Okay, so talking about cpan spec. Yeah, sorry about that. It's so yeah, most of you probably know if you want to create a spec file, it has to be package name.spec, and that's needed. You need some instructions to build a package on OpenSUSE or other distributions. And there are also general packing guidelines. I will share I plan to do that from the beginning. I will share the link to this blog page. And in devel languages Perl, we have 3,157 Perl modules. And of course, yeah, that wouldn't be possible without doing some automation, right? So we're using cpan spec to generate the spec files. But for Perl, it's a little bit easier than, for example, for other modules like Python, because I decided to do this talk because I saw the talk on py2pack from Antonio and Lubos a couple of months ago. And Perl has a little advantage. So if you look at a Perl module on MetaCpan, so MetaCpan is really the homepage for every Perl module. And the structure of a Perl module and also the documentation is really very common. So the list of files, for example, we have some meta files, the changes and the license manifest, and makefile PL, for example. And scripts are under bin or script, and the modules are then under lib. There can be exceptions, but really this is how most modules are structured. And also the documentation is like 98% of the times it's structured like that. So the first thing you have is the name and the abstract. And for the documentation, Perl uses POD. That's the abbreviation of plain old documentation. But yeah, it might be old, but it's really it's sufficient for most things actually. The second one is usually a synopsis with some code examples. And the next one is description, and that's again interesting for us and for cpan-spec because cpan-spec parses the pod to get the description of the module. And for example, I saw in the Python Py2Pack talk that this is a little bit different for Python packages, and the Py2Pack just gets the whole README file into the spec file, and then you have to shorten it every time you use it. If I'm saying something that's wrong, just let me know. Yeah, and also the name of the tarball is very common. So if I go to download, that's the name of the tarball. So it's module name and then minus the version and then tar gz, can also be tgz or xz or even zip. But basically, yeah, module name or actually the distribution name with a minus, then the dash and the version. I've seen that for Python packages, there can also be underscores. And if you generate a spec file, you have to change the underscores to dashes and stuff like that. So that's, of course, a disadvantage to do it automatically. Yeah, so I showed the main structure with the file names and the meta files. Maybe let's look at one of them. So here it actually has the abstract, which we've also seen in the pod. So cpan-spec can, in most cases, just go to the meta file and get some interesting fields. The name of the distribution can get from here, and it should match, of course, the tarball name. There are cases where it doesn't match, but this is really rare. And here we can also see it has a license, and it's just Perl. So the meta file just gives us a short name for the license. And in that case, we don't have to search for it and for the long text. And but cpan-spec can also do this. I will show you in a minute. Yeah, we have the dependencies. And we have some resources that's not so interesting for cpan-spec. And also here we have the version. Yeah, so if we have licensed Perl, then we know what to do. We just have artistic or GPL. Let me show that there's actually, yeah, here's the Perl YAML PP in OBS. And here's the spec file. And here we have artistic or GPL. But it can happen that the license is not in the meta file. There should also be a license file in there. Not always, but in many cases. And then what cpan-spec does is it reads the file and just does some heuristics on it and then decides which license this is. And there's another option. If the license file is also missing, then you can look at the pod and hope. There is a copyright and license section here. And yeah, it says the library is free software and may be distributed under the same terms as Perl itself. So that's also artistic or GPL. Yeah, so far about the meta fields. Yeah, I've written it down and also have the according links in the blog post. So you should have all the links there. And
how is it
yeah,
ensured to have the structure? Is there a, I mean, I did it myself to upload things to cpan, but is that like a prerequisite if you upload it to cpan?
right, yeah, I forgot to say that it's not insured in any way, so you can upload a tarball with anything in it, any structure. I actually don't like that there's even no feedback like, hey, what you uploaded is total bullshit. And but the tools which you are using to generate the tarball, they ensure that. And so if you're using a tool like XUtils MakeMaker or even Distiller, one of the more advanced, then the structure will be there. Yeah, and the documentation is of course something that you learn from others if you look at other modules. But yeah, it's not insured. That answer your question?
Yeah, sure. So one can assume that nobody's building those archives manually, but it could be a possibility. And then, I'm asking that specifically about then how to package it downstream in OBS, because then if you know that there is no standard prescribed on cpan, you might need to handle some text there, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's really surprising how many are using the standard. There are some differences, but yeah, it works pretty well. And yeah, we have the SPDX license list. I'm not sure if I should actually look at the code here, because the cpan spec script is quite old and it's a long monolithic script. And yeah, it's a little bit ugly. So here it does some matching to the side, but there are other places as well. And it probably should be all in one place. And maybe I have time at some point to make that a little bit nicer. But yeah, here's the heuristics I was talking about. Okay, so yeah, so that's about how a Perl module is structured. And if you want to run SegmentSpec on a new module, then the first thing you should do is get the package index. So if you are using cpan or cpan-m, the client on your machine, you probably have that index somewhere, but it's also not guaranteed to be updated or up to date enough. So you should download that, and maybe I can actually show this. Of course, now I have to unshare and share again and hope that it is working. And I have to make sure to use the right window. Just Okay. Yeah, the problem is Firefox doesn't show me a preview. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, it's
Yes.
clear.
Okay, readable?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I already downloaded the 2 tarballs and the package index here. So let's try this out and hope it does work. It did work yesterday. It can take a while. That's some debugging line I left in, sorry. So it generated a spec file and a changes file. Let's have a quick look at the changes file. So yeah, initial package created by cpan spec. And now let's go through the spec file. Okay, so we have the big header, define cpan name. So that's useful for later, so we don't have to repeat that distribution name. And yeah, the package name is always perl minus and then the distribution name. Yeah, version. And here the version that the module is using has 2 dots, and that's the kind of the newer form of versions for cpan modules, because the traditional versions were just decimals, not like the semantic versions you know. So that means 1.1 is actually bigger than 1.20. No, 1.2 is bigger than 1.10, for example. And that's a whole other story I could do a talk about. So far, SUSE has been taking the versions directly from cpan. And if RPM sees, then there will be problems if it compares versions that have different amount of digits. And we are in the process of changing that and normalize every version to one with 2 dots. But yeah, you can also find some more details on my blog about that. Actually, yeah, this is not what I wanted to show you at the first time. I still had that cpan spec file here. Let's run it again. Right. Okay. Yeah, so here we see the license, the summary from the meta, and then we have the URL, and that's just the generic meta cpan homepage, so very convenient. We don't have to find out some custom web page. And meta cpan actually can link to custom homepages itself, if there is any. The source is also generic, but it takes into account the username. The architecture, so build arc is no arc, and it also uses some heuristics to decide that. So it looks for .c files, for example, in the source table, and if there are no such files, then it decides, okay, build arc is no arc. Then there's some common requirements, and then the next requirements are taken from the meta file. And another macro that does stuff for us. And then here we have the description. That's taken from the pod documentation. It's actually quite long, but it's still okay, I think. Yes, Janis?
Yeah, I kind of confused. The build requirements here. First of all, before you saw something there, another spec and had a patch. Where the patch came because you didn't have any patch in the directory. Then you saw the YML and it had different build requirements, which is not here. They are not.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand everything of that. Did anyone else understand and can?
Okay, you saw in CPAN a YML that had some build requirements and stuff, and they don't look the same with the spec.
I already lost you. We saw where?
In the CPAN site, where it was the CPAN metas CPAN, you saw the structure, and that was a YML.
I'm sorry. It's
the meta YAML on CPAN
Yes.
side.
Yes. Okay. Maybe I know what you're getting at.
Also, what's the package details contain like, or how we validated this is correct?
Okay, let's do one thing at a time.
Yeah, just brainstorming things. Okay.
So you meant those requirements, right?
Yeah, there was some build requirement somewhere. Yeah, I think so. I don't remember if it was the same exactly, but yes.
And
This requires, I think there was some section build requires.
So your question is why those requirements aren't appearing in the spec file?
They are not appearing, right? But this is requirement is not build requires.
Yeah, so not all of them are appearing because they are actually, some of them are actually core modules. So B is actually a core module and get.long is as well. And cpan spec knows which modules are delivered with the Perl core. And since what version, and then it decides it doesn't have to put them in the spec file because then, yeah, it would get quite long. So that's why only those modules are appearing here. These are not in core. And yeah, I hope that answers that part of the question.
I scanned the yes, thanks. Then you saw another spec file before you generate, and I don't know if it was just some custom example, but there was a path, and the directory that you built the spec, there was no path. So where did it came from?
Can someone translate? I'm really sorry. So, you know, I have some problem with my hearing.
Sorry, I can't. Janis, your audio is too low. I
Maybe
suggest
type.
we move on and leave it for
Yeah.
later. You could type it in
Type.
chat and we
Right.
follow up there.
Yeah.
But I think we can proceed a bit first and then come back to that.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the description. Like I said, it might be too long for some modules, but I will show you in a minute. And yeah, here we have the common preparation that looks the same, unless there might be some patch which is using minus P0 or something like that. I would also show you. And here's the build section and cpan spec. Let's add that to Git. Okay, and now I'm running the same for the next version. So a new version was released. Okay, so it tells me file exists. So I have to use -f or -force to tell it can overwrite it. Yeah, that's of course. The changes file, so it added an entry here automatically, and normally it would also get the changes from the modules changes file. I'm not sure why it doesn't do that here. It usually does, and it works when it's done automatically in OBS. But yeah, believe me, it usually works. And the difference in the spec file is really just this. So yeah, having a new release is really easy. Don't have to do any manual changes in most cases, and then you're done. But now let's assume there are actually some things we have to change. So maybe there's a patch. Okay, ignore that stuff. So let's say there is a bug and we have a patch for that. And then this is the syntax, how we tell cpan spec that we have a patch. So yeah, the file is just called cpan spec YAML. And there can be more than one patch, and it's a hash or mapping. And the key is the file name, and for the value, you can tell it the patch parameters, usually -p1. And also, let's assume the summary in the module is just wrong or not enough. Then you can use a better summary here. And yeah, leftover files. Actually, I could use the makefile dev here. So for some modules, you have to do this because they have some stuff in the root directory which you don't want to list as documentation, and then you can list them here. And let's also assume the license given by the module is wrong, and we want to overwrite it here. And also the build requirements are not enough, or for if it's a binding to a C library, then the CPAN module itself, there's no way to specify such a library. You can only specify Perl dependencies, but not libraries like this. And so YAML PP doesn't need this because it's pure Perl, but let's just assume it needs this. And this is the way how you can add any build requirements or runtime requirements. Yeah. Okay, so now let's run CPAN spec again. Now this is not about a new version, so I tell it just to skip the changes part. Yeah. Okay, so the spec file now looks different. I used the new version. I wanted to use the same version, but it doesn't matter. But here we see the license. It tells you now as a commented line that the upstream license is this one, but here it uses the actual license from the overriding file and the improved abstract. And it automatically adds the CPAN spec YAML as a source itself. And here we see the patch. And so the build requirements here will be surrounded by manual begin and manual end, although it's not really manual, right? We are doing this automatically, so manual is actually the wrong word. And here we also see that the makefile dev is not listed anymore as a documentation. And the patch will just be automatically applied because we use the auto setup. And so this way, we can just do this automatically, and this should now work. And we don't ever have to touch the spec file manually again. And if there's a new version, then we can just run this and it will still take the overriding values. So yeah, in most cases, you don't have to do anything manually. Of course, there can be cases where now the next version actually might fix this bug, and then you have to remove the patch and stuff like that, but you will see that if it stops building. Yeah, so this is really convenient. Are there any questions about this part so far? Okay. So maybe I should try to share my browser again. Crossed fingers. Okay, it seems I'm still here. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's what I just showed in the terminal. And like I said, yeah, Perl module versions are a bit special, so I have this other article where I'm going into more detail about that. So now, how do we actually update that? So we can just call CPAN spec, right? But am I doing this myself or what? So let's look at devel languages Perl. Like I said, we have 3,000 modules here. And it's possible, of course, to look for outdated modules, right? Yes, Janis?
Quick question. If you generate the spec, and can you do manual changes then?
Yes, I can do manual changes, of course.
But then it's not gonna be synced with the SUPAN, no?
It's not what?
Then
It's
it's not
not.
synced with the
Yeah.
source from where you generate a spec file from, or you update the spec file from. That's correct. Yep. So
Yeah.
I think it's always best to make it well, the most upstream that you can. So CSPAN spec YAML is better than in spec file itself, and doing that upstream even better.
Yeah, actually, I forgot to show. So this is actually what you can change. And there's actually a lot. I just showed a few of them. You can even say like, okay, the description for this module is very long and let's just take 3 paragraphs. You can also override the complete description. You can tell it, don't do any tests. Post prep, post build, custom test, skip doc, add doc. So yeah, there's a lot you can override, and most of the things you would want to do manually in the spec, you should be able to do with the cpan spec override. Yeah. Now let's look at Repology. How many of you know Repology and use it regularly? Maybe raise your hands. 2, 3, 4. Okay, great. So I find this really useful, and it has a common name for things, because in SUSE and other distributions, the libraries might have different names. And here you usually have a common name for them. Now let's look for advanced. I'm searching for Perl packages in OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. And I'm only looking for outdated ones. And you will see 46, and that's actually a quite high value. I'm a little bit behind with updating, because even having some automation, if it's not fully automated, then yeah, one can get behind. But these are the outdated packages. If you look for Python, then you will get 200, but that's just because it only shows 200 items in this page, and we are only at D. So I don't know how many there are actually. But yeah, that's, I guess, because it's not done automatically for Python. And if I go to devel languages Perl subprojects, I will see there is an auto update repository, and that's actually what we're using. And you can see there are 100 packages in there. So I should really go over that. And the automation that we have here is so, for example, xutils depends. And let's look at the diff. And so this is done automatically. We see actually the changes taken from the changes file from the module. And this apparently hasn't been updated for quite a while. New version. It also got a new summary, apparently. Or maybe that's just been moving to a different place. But the person who uploaded it is different, and it also has a new requirement. So that's really a use case that, yeah, if you have a new requirement or at least a new version of a requirement, then you get that automatically. Yeah, some description has changed. And we are doing this currently in this GitHub action. So here's the GitHub repository, which is has some scripts which are calling cpan spec, and here are the actions. So let's look at one of the runs. So here it clones the repository, configures OSC, then it fetches this the module index from cpan and decides what it has to update. Does it actually do any updates? Oh no, today it didn't, because so this is from yesterday. So it goes over all the files in auto update, and it here's a new one that's not yet in there, so that's OpenGL. And it creates this in the auto update repository. And then it calls cpan spec on it. And if there would be any error, then it would end up in that package. And we could look at the error. But here everything works. This is, yeah, just some error in Makefile PL that is usually not problematic for building the spec file. So that's something that can be ignored. That's just some debugging output from cpan spec. And then it adds the new version. And yeah, that's what it does for every module. And so the only thing left, so the only thing left I have to do is I look at the actual diff. So the diff for the spec file, but I also might take a look at the complete diff. Especially if, yeah, if the author has been changing and I don't know, then maybe I can have a closer look. And then I submit it.
You submit it to devel languages Perl first, and then
Yeah.
also OpenSUSE Factory.
Yeah, so it's filled out automatically because it was the branch. And I should remove the local package so the auto update is cleaned up, and then I can hit submit. I could do this right now, but yeah, it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's how we do it automatically. Yeah, it can fail sometimes. Like here, there was actually some problem with the OpenGL module, and I fixed that yesterday. And so got it working again. The only disadvantage is that if I don't do any action in this repository for 60 days, then GitHub thinks that it's abandoned and it won't run the actions anymore. So I have to run it manually again. But this works quite well. Yeah, use GitHub's machines for that. So yeah, are there any questions about that? I think I'm basically finished. So I have time for questions.
I have one question. Where do
Yeah.
you see the biggest effort in manual administration? So I don't mean like development of the tooling, but just the review and creating submit requests or handling some day-to-day tasks. Yeah.
Yeah, so outdated patches are a bit annoying because some things might be fixed upstream and then you can remove the patch, but sometimes it's not fixed upstream, but the patch is outdated because some lines were changed that break the patch. That's an annoying task, for example. Yeah, anything where you have to look at the module, what did it actually change? Why doesn't it build anymore? Especially for modules with C bindings, if there is a build problem.
Yeah.
So we do this automatically, and then we have more time to try to fix builds, but still I could need help there if you see any failing modules in Devel languages Perl or in auto update. You can attempt to fix it if you know a little bit about C bindings. But also there's an effort to actually find patches. That actually what I wanted to share as well. We have an annual Perl Toolchain Summit, and last year I talked a little bit about that every vendor is doing their own thing, like it's failing in Fedora, it's failing in Debian, and we are all looking for the patch or for a missing dependency. But it would be cool to have some central database. And what I did last year is I got all the cpan spec YAML files from Devel languages Perl and put them into one file to see what kind of differences we actually have. And I can actually share that link. It's only also linked in the blog post. But here's the link. So yeah, there are quite some changes. So cpan spec is used a lot. I mean, most modules, like I said, are fine, but for 3,000 modules, there are some which we have to fix this way. So yeah, if you're interested, look at that big mess. I also collected the patches itself in one file. Not sure if that's a good idea. And also just the dependencies. So we thought we might be able to share some of this in a central location. So not everyone has to do this on their own, but not sure how feasible that is. Yeah. Any other questions?
I would be interested in a kind of proportion of how many packages you can update without any intervention and how many of them need intervention, because we have the Py2 pack, which is kind of equivalent to Python, and the results are not exactly automatic.
That's a good question. I actually, when I did the version normalization or parts of it during the last month. I fixed some of the modules and actually added the cpan spec YAML file because they were just created in ancient times where this didn't exist yet. So I fixed some of them, but there are still some older packages that I cannot fix like that, but 95% maybe. I wouldn't
Okay,
bet on it, but yeah.
Sounds
Then
pretty
I
good.
bow to the regularity of Perl maintainers because I wouldn't dare to have such numbers with Python. Okay, thank you.
Cool. If you have more questions, reach out to Tina or our usual communication channels. If there's some interest, there was also some mention in chat. Maybe we can also follow up later this year. I would like to just provide a short glimpse into the schedule on what will happen next. So I'm switching over. There we are. So we had how we automatically update Perl modules devel language with Perl. Thank you, Tina, for that. In 2 weeks from now, on the 1st of April, SUSE QE Tools roadmap on for 2025-04. After that, we will skip due to some Easter holiday and other. And then on the 16th of May, automatic submission of OpenQA related packages using CI pipelines and OpenQA and OpenQA, which we already had mentioned sometimes in some kind of joint sessions or it's like these free topic sessions, but now we want to dedicate a workshop onto that. So see you again in 2 weeks for the roadmap presentation. Until then, see you and goodbye.